Hey everybody, I bet a lot of you have one or two of these sort of Mylar space blankets that have traveled a lot of miles with you. They live in the trunk of your car, in the bottom of your backpack, just in case. You've never actually opened one of these up and certainly never tried to sleep under one outside in cold weather. But they're small, they're cheap, they hardly weigh anything, so you figure, what the heck, I'll probably never need it, but it's better than nothing, right? Well, I know exactly how you feel, because for the longest time I had much the same approach. I have these in my first aid kit, in the trunk of my car, my day pack, and so forth. Then one day I got curious and I actually opened one up. What I found was that the material is incredibly thin. So thin you can imagine it easily tearing on almost anything. You would have to be very, very careful not to rip it, which is not exactly what you're looking for in an emergency situation. Even more concerning than the sort of the fragility of it was the size. These are really not big enough to sleep under, no way. They're more like a crinkly shawl or like a big beach towel that you can wrap around yourself than something that really should be, viewed as a full-size blanket. So, but at the time, that was sort of all that we had, right? These things were the only sort of game in town, and so my reaction was to just go get a second one, carry two of them, figuring I could probably make two of them sort of work if I had to. But my main plan was simply never be in a situation where I needed these, so I'd not have to do some kind of crazy MacGyver thing with some improvised sleeping bag, sticking two of these together. And then, one evening I was shopping on Amazon for something else, and these Mylar sleeping bags popped up. And like a lot of Chinese stuff, there's probably some factory somewhere in China that makes all of these, and then they get sold in Amazon under like maybe half a dozen or more different brands, none of which you've heard of, and the prices are all over the map. I'm going to put a link below to the specific one I purchased, but you should definitely shop around if you're thinking about buying one of these. Just see who was selling this particular emergency sleeping bag with the orange and black markings and the spacing, the size that it has, which is about just over 83 inches long. Of course, if I can't be much use if I haven't actually pulled this apart and tried it and checked it out. And so indeed, I bravely opened one of these up. I unfolded it, checked it out. I even crawled inside and figured out how well I would fit inside and whether I could spend any time in it. And here's what I have to report from my initial experience with these. First of all, understand that although this is a big step up from those little blankets, it will reflect your heat to keep you warm. The material doesn't breathe at all, so it has really no way to deal with moisture. So if you sweat inside it or you enter it and you're already wet, the water is just going to collect inside, making it kind of clammy, unpleasant. You're not going to want to spend a lot of time in this if you don't absolutely have to. I think the way to think about this is like if you could make a comfortable sleeping bag that weighs 160 grams, folds down this small, and everybody would be carrying something like that. They wouldn't be carrying down sleeping bags anymore. The quality of this particular Mylar bag is indeed a lot better than I expected it to be. The Mylar is much thicker than the space blanket material. This makes it, if not really durable, no longer terrifyingly fragile either. I would not be throwing this down on a bunch of sticks or rocks if I could avoid it, but I don't think it's likely to immediately combust if exposed to the wind or a sharp pebble. It is absolutely huge, so it really can be used like a bivy. For reference, I'm 6'4" tall, and I've got pretty broad shoulders, and I could get my entire body inside with a lot of room left over. For scale, here are a few pictures of this thing laid on the floor with the U.S. military sleep system Bivy laid over it. Realize that that's a full-size Bivy designed to fit even the largest guys in the Army after you stuff two big sleeping bags inside it. So that thing is really enormous already, and indeed the Mylar Bivy or emergency sleeping bag is bigger than that. So. I think in warmer weather, the most logical way you'd want to use this is almost more like being a little pup tent where your body provides all the structure. You crawl completely inside, lay on your stomach, and leave the one end that's not sealed wide open so you can get some ventilation and airflow. That will both keep you out of the rain. It'll also probably keep you warm enough unless it gets really cold. Of course, you got to keep the end open if you want to live. You know, closing yourself into what is really just a giant potato chip bag is not going to end well for you when you run out of breathable air. So just point the open end out of the wind and the rain, and you'd be fine tucked up in this thing. In colder weather, you would want to use it more like a sleeping bag, where your head sticks all the way out of the top. You gather the ends up around your neck to keep the heat in. That, I think, is going to be a little harder to do, because unlike a real sleeping bag, there's no drawstring or easy way to cinch it tight around you. If I could, I would probably take some duct tape and paracord and make up a makeshift drawstring to help keep the bag tight around my neck if I ever really had to use it in a, in a cold weather situation. Another advantage to this over the old Mylar space blankets is that the size of this and its relative durability means it has uses beyond just for emergencies. Well, I'm normally going to carry this, when I'm doing day hikes in case I get caught out for the night. I think it may also come backpacking with me, and here are some other ways I think it might be useful. It's an improvised bivy if your primary shelter fails. Imagine it's 2 a.m., there's a major storm rolling in, and you realize that you've got a seam in your tent that's leaking, or you're under a tarp, but it's not fully protecting you from the blowing rain. You can stuff your sleeping bag into this thing, or even just lay it over the top of your bag and go back to sleep. The same issue if you're having really serious condensation problems in the tent, you're worried about your down sleeping bag getting drenched. Just make sure you're relying so none of your breath is getting into the bag, because your breath contains the moisture that's causing the condensation problem. But if you keep your head well out of the bag so that it's not collecting moisture, it would actually, I think, do pretty well in that situation. It's also big enough that you could store your pack outside in the rain. Throwing your backpack into this and then carefully cinching up the end, it's going to keep your stuff dry even better than a pack cover would probably. It's also probably going to be useful if you figure out that you don't have enough sleeping bag for the conditions you're in. Much like a sleeping bag liner, stuffing your sleeping bag into this is going to improve its thermal performance. If you're freezing, you probably aren't sweating much, but realize that it's critical that you don't sweat in your sleeping bag if it is stuffed into this, because there is really nowhere for the moisture to go once you're inside this thing. Yeah, you could. I mean, this is probably, I think, reaching for the limits of the quality of the thing. You could set it up as a sort of a small sort of shade or a rain tarp. I really would be very excited to make this into something that has to take a lot of wind load. It has no grommets or straps designed to hang it up, but you could absolutely improvise a small bit of shade or even rain protection without getting inside it if you had to. I think this is actually thick enough that it could be an emergency tent footprint. If you figure out you're somewhere, you didn't bring your tent footprint, and you realize you're somewhere that's really going to probably tear up the bottom of your tent, you could sacrifice this and just go buy another one when you're done with it. Because it's so big, you could absolutely get, probably even the largest tents. Well, I mean, not like a cabin tent or something, but certainly the largest backpacking tent would easily fit on top of one of these things, and so that's another possible use for it. And I think probably the most important thing to know if you're thinking about buying this is the word reusable is not a misnomer. I did in fact climb into this thing, as I said, and then I was able to roll it back up and get it back into the bag, and actually wasn't that hard to do. So yes, because it's a little more burly and durable, it actually is something you could reuse. So I'm planning to replace my Mylar space blankets with these, and frankly I suggest you do the same. Have a nice afternoon. Thanks everybody.